Have you ever noticed your elderly parent or grandparent forget the simplest little things? Maybe it's where they placed their glasses, maybe it's what day of the week it is, or maybe it's a story they've told you 1,000 times, but suddenly they can't quite remember the ending. And in that moment, you shrug it off. You tell yourself, well, that's just what happens with age, right? Everyone gets a little forgetful. But here's the thing no one really talks about. Sometimes it's not just aging. Sometimes the real reason behind that sudden fog, that rapid decline, that heartbreaking confusion isn't age at all. It might be hiding in the one place you'd never think to look. Their medicine cabinet. Yes, medications. The very pills that are supposed to keep them healthy, comfortable, and safe can sometimes do the opposite. They can speed up memory loss, they can trigger confusion, they can quietly fuel dementia-like symptoms that families mistake for just getting older. And the most alarming part? These aren't rare, mysterious drugs that only a few people take. No, they're some of the most popular everyday medications that millions of seniors swallow every single day. Pills for sleep, pills for allergies, pills for the heart, for pain, for bladder problems. Medications you probably wouldn't even think twice about. Now, I know this might sound frightening, and maybe right now you're even thinking about your loved one's daily routine, what they take in the morning, what they take at night. And you're wondering, could these be making things worse? Could I have missed the warning signs? That's why this conversation matters so much. Because the truth is, dementia isn't always written into someone's DNA. It's not always just nature taking its course. Sometimes it's preventable. And sometimes, with the right knowledge, you can step in before the damage becomes irreversible. By the end of this video, you're going to know the 9 common medications most often linked to rapid dementia. You'll understand the hidden risks that doctors don't always explain in detail. And most importantly, you'll walk away with safer alternatives and practical questions you can bring up at your loved one's next checkup. This knowledge could mean the difference between years of fog and years of clarity, between losing precious moments or holding on to them just a little longer. But I want you to do one thing for me right now. Before we dive in, before we uncover these medications, I want you to type "I'm here" down in the comments. Type it to remind yourself that you're here because you care. You're here because you want to protect the people you love from hidden dangers. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to LifeStamina, because every week we uncover life-saving tips and insights designed to help you and your loved ones live stronger, healthier, and more fulfilling years. So, are you ready? Let's open that medicine cabinet together. Let's start with one of the most common struggles among seniors: sleep. You know how it goes. Your father or your grandmother tosses and turns at night. They complain, "I just can't shut my mind off. I need something to help me sleep." And like so many families, you give in. You go to the doctor, and before long there's a little bottle of pills on the nightstand, promising peace, rest, and relief. At first, it feels like a miracle. They finally sleep through the night. They wake up a little calmer. Everyone in the house breathes easier. But then, weeks turn into months, and you begin to notice something else. The once sharp man who never forgot a birthday now struggles to remember where he put his wallet. The grandmother who could tell stories from her childhood in vivid detail suddenly trails off mid-sentence. It sneaks up quietly, but the changes are real. These sleep medications, especially benzodiazepines and similar sedatives, work by slowing down brain activity. They calm the nervous system, which makes it easier to fall asleep. But here's the hidden cost. When the brain is suppressed night after night, the very areas responsible for learning, memory, and focus get dulled. Over time, the ability to form new memories and recall old ones begins to fade. What starts as a quick fix for insomnia can quietly erode the mind itself. Now here's the part families often misunderstand. We tend to think, well, isn't losing sleep worse than forgetting a few things? But that's not true. While lack of sleep is hard, the long-term damage of sedative sleep aids can actually accelerate cognitive decline much faster than poor rest ever could. What looks like harmless forgetfulness may in fact be the side effect of medication meant to help. So what's the better path? It doesn't always have to be a pill. Natural alternatives exist, things as simple as creating a calming bedtime routine, using lavender essential oils, playing gentle music, or investing in a weighted blanket that reduces anxiety. Even guided relaxation or light stretching before bed can reset the body's rhythm. These small changes don't come with the hidden risk of stripping away precious memories. And remember, the danger isn't in the first pill. It's in the quiet, steady reliance that builds up over time, when months of nightly use become years of decline. But sleep medications aren't the only everyday drugs that carry this hidden threat. Some of the very pills we take for allergies, yes, those little tablets that seem so harmless, can be just as risky, and in some cases, even more damaging. Now let's talk about something almost every household has tucked away in a bathroom drawer or a kitchen cabinet: those little allergy pills. You know the ones I mean. Maybe it's springtime and the pollen is flying, or maybe it's just a restless night with sneezing and watery eyes. So you reach for that familiar box. It feels so safe. After all, it's over the counter, right? How dangerous could it really be? But here's the story families rarely connect. Imagine an older parent who starts taking one of these pills every single day. At first, it's for seasonal allergies, but then the bottle becomes a crutch, one at bedtime to help them rest, another for congestion, maybe even combined with cold medicine during flu season. Slowly, without warning, you begin to notice small changes. They forget what they walked into the room for. They ask the same question 2, 3, even 4 times in the same afternoon. You chalk it up to age. But behind the scenes, something much more serious is happening. You see, many of the older antihistamines, like diphenhydramine, the main ingredient in Benadryl, have what's called an anticholinergic effect. That's a scientific way of saying they block a critical neurotransmitter in the brain: acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is absolutely essential for learning and memory. Without it, the brain can't communicate properly. Messages don't get delivered. Short-term memory starts to crumble. And the longer these drugs are used, the more that fog sets in. Here's where the misconception creeps in. Families think, come on, it's just allergy medicine. It's harmless. Everyone takes it. But that assumption is exactly what makes it dangerous. Because while an occasional dose for a bad night might not cause lasting harm, the long-term, daily use can quietly set the stage for dementia-like symptoms. The kind that creep in slowly, leaving families confused about why their loved one seems to fade so quickly. So what's the alternative? Thankfully, medicine has evolved. Today, there are newer, non-sedating antihistamines that don't carry the same risks. But here's the key. You have to ask. Don't just assume your loved one's prescription or routine over-the-counter choice is the safest option. A simple conversation with their doctor or pharmacist could mean the difference between keeping a sharp mind and living in a haze. And think about this. It's not just the prescription drugs that raise red flags. Even the things you can grab off the shelf at the local drugstore can quietly change the course of someone's memory. That's the part that catches families off guard. But allergy meds aren't the only everyday pills with a hidden dark side. Because when it comes to pain, those little pills so many people take after surgery or for chronic aches, the risks can cut even deeper. Now, let's move to another class of medications that so many families encounter after surgery or when chronic pain sets in: strong painkillers, often opioids. Picture this: your father has hip surgery. The operation goes well, the doctors are pleased, and he's given a prescription to help manage the pain during recovery. At first, it feels like a blessing. The pills ease his discomfort, allow him to move a little more freely, and help him rest at night. But then, something changes. A few weeks later, you notice he's not himself. He seems disoriented. He repeats questions. He struggles to follow a conversation. The sparkle in his eyes has dulled. And you wonder, is this just the after effect of surgery? Is he still healing? Maybe this is normal, but here's the truth. Often, it's not the surgery at all. It's the medication. Opioids are powerful drugs, and while they can numb pain, they also slow down critical brain signaling. The very chemicals that allow your loved one to think clearly, to remember, to process, get disrupted. Over time, instead of healing, the brain is left confused. The longer these medications are used, the greater the risk of lasting cognitive decline. And here's the dangerous misconception. Families often assume that confusion, memory problems, or personality changes are simply part of recovery, or worse, part of aging. They don't think to question the little white pill in the bottle marked for pain. But the reality is, what looks like natural decline may actually be drug-induced fog. So what can you do? The safest path is to keep opioid use as short-term as possible. These medications were never meant to be a long-term solution. Ask the doctor about alternatives, things like physical therapy, gentle stretching routines, or non-opioid pain relievers that can manage discomfort without erasing clarity. Sometimes, even lifestyle approaches like heat therapy or targeted exercises can make a bigger difference than another pill. Because here's the hard truth: the pain of recovery can fade, but the pain of losing memories, of losing connection, can last forever. And opioids aren't the only everyday medications with surprising risks. In fact, one of the most common drug categories, taken by millions of seniors every single day for heartburn, reflux, or indigestion, carries hidden dangers of its own. Now let's talk about something that almost feels routine: acid reflux. You know, that burning in the chest after a big meal, the sour taste in the back of the throat at night? Millions of seniors deal with it every single day. And what's the solution? For many, it's those little acid-reducing pills. Proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs. They're everywhere, on pharmacy shelves, in medicine cabinets, tucked into purses. Easy to grab, easy to take. Here's the picture. Imagine someone who pops one every day. Morning, night, it becomes a habit. At first, the relief feels magical. The fire in the chest disappears, the discomfort eases, and eating feels normal again. But then, quietly, something else begins. Words slip away mid-sentence. Simple names take longer to recall. A once fluid conversation is suddenly filled with pauses, stumbles, and "what was I saying again?" moments. Families assume it's just aging, but could it be something else? Here's what many don't realize. Long-term use of PPIs has been linked to vitamin B12 deficiency. And B12 isn't just another vitamin, it's vital for brain health. Without enough of it, the brain struggles to function, memory falters, and confusion creeps in. What seems like a small daily habit, swallowing one little pill, can quietly rob the body of the nutrients the brain desperately needs. And here's where the false sense of security comes in. Because PPIs are available over the counter, people assume they must be safe for long-term use. If I can buy it without a prescription, how bad can it be? But that assumption is dangerous. Just because it's easy to get doesn't mean it's harmless, especially when months turn into years. So what's the better path forward? For many people, lifestyle changes can do wonders. Eating smaller meals, avoiding heavy food late at night, elevating the head of the bed, even cutting back on caffeine or spicy foods. These adjustments don't just ease reflux, they protect the brain at the same time. Because here's the reality: heartburn may be uncomfortable, but losing your memories is devastating. One can be managed with a little discipline, the other, once it's gone, it rarely comes back. And this brings us to something even more concerning, because it's not just about the stomach. What about the medications prescribed for the heart itself? That's where things get even trickier. Now let's turn to something that feels even more serious: the heart. When a loved one is prescribed heart medication, there's a sense of trust. After all, the heart keeps us alive. So when the doctor prescribes beta blockers or similar drugs to manage blood pressure, prevent irregular rhythms, or protect against strain, we don't question it. We simply nod, we fill the prescription, and we remind them to take it faithfully every morning. But what happens when that same loved one begins to change? Imagine this: a once energetic grandfather who always greeted you at the door with a smile now sits in his chair most of the day. He moves slower, his voice sounds dull, he stares at the TV without really watching. And when you talk to him, his responses are delayed, foggy, almost as though he's wading through a heavy cloud. Families often say, well, he's under stress, he's getting older, his heart problems are catching up with him. But sometimes the real cause isn't the heart disease, it's the very medication prescribed to protect the heart. Certain beta blockers work by slowing the heart rate and reducing strain, but in doing so, they can also reduce blood flow to the brain. And the brain, especially in aging adults, needs all the oxygen and nutrients it can get. When the supply is slowed, clarity fades. The result is fatigue, sluggishness, and yes, even memory problems that can look alarmingly like dementia. The heartbreaking part is that families rarely connect the dots. They accept the fog as a natural part of aging, when in reality it may be a side effect of the little pill they see swallowed every day with breakfast. So what's the answer? The first step is awareness. If you notice confusion, mental dullness, or memory changes after starting or adjusting a heart medication, speak up. Ask the doctor if an alternative exists. Sometimes a different dose or a different class of medication can manage the heart without compromising the mind. No one should have to choose between protecting the body and protecting the memory. Because while the heart keeps the body alive, it's our memories, our conversations, our stories that make life worth living. And when it comes to protecting both heart and mind, the picture becomes even more complicated when diabetes enters the equation. Because one class of diabetes medications, often given with the best of intentions, raises even more questions about hidden risks to memory. And now let's shift to something that touches millions of seniors worldwide: diabetes. For many families, managing diabetes feels like a never-ending routine. Blood sugar checks in the morning, pills at breakfast, sometimes insulin shots later in the day. It becomes part of daily life, almost automatic. And with that routine comes trust. These medicines are what keep them alive. We have no choice. But here's the part many families don't realize. Over the years, some of the older classes of diabetes medications, especially when combined with blood sugar swings, may quietly take a toll on the brain. Picture this. Your mother has been managing her diabetes for decades. She takes her pills faithfully, eats as carefully as she can, and tries her best to stay active. But then something shifts. She struggles to recall conversations you had just yesterday. She forgets appointments she wrote down only hours before. She misplaces her glasses again and again, and each time it feels a little worse. At first you think, well, her blood sugar must have been low, maybe she skipped a meal. But what if the real culprit isn't just the sugar? It's the very drugs she's been told to rely on. You see, when blood sugar rises and falls sharply, it stresses the brain. Add on top of that certain older medications, which in some cases interfere with how the brain uses energy, and the result can be a steady decline in memory and focus. Over time, what looks like just aging may actually be the combined effect of sugar imbalances and medications that weren't designed with long-term brain health in mind. And here's the common mistake families make. They blame diet alone. They think if their loved one just ate better, the memory issues would improve. But sometimes, even the strictest diet can't undo what a certain drug is quietly doing behind the scenes. So what can you do if this feels familiar? The most important step is to ask questions. Many newer diabetes management options exist today. Medications and treatment strategies that may support blood sugar control without putting the brain at greater risk. Sometimes even a shift in approach, like adding more physical activity or adjusting diet with professional guidance, can reduce reliance on drugs that do more harm than good. Because diabetes doesn't just affect the body, it can shape the mind. And with the right awareness, you can protect both. But the story doesn't end here, because memory problems don't only come from physical health conditions. Sometimes the very medications prescribed to heal the heart, the mind, and the spirit, like antidepressants, can carry their own hidden risks. And this is where things become even more emotional. Now let's talk about something that reaches into the most personal corners of life: mental health. Depression is not rare in older age. Loneliness, grief, loss of independence, declining health, they can all weigh heavy on the heart. And when sadness lingers, when the spark begins to fade, families often turn to doctors for help. The prescription pad comes out and an antidepressant is written down. It feels like hope in a bottle. But here's the story families don't expect. Imagine a grandmother who was once sharp, lively, and quick-witted. She could light up a room with her stories, remember details from 50 years ago, and laugh at the smallest things. Then, after being prescribed an older antidepressant, maybe a tricyclic, she begins to change. She becomes quieter, more withdrawn. Her memory slips in strange ways. She forgets names, loses her train of thought, and slowly that bright spark you once knew begins to dim. It's easy to assume this is just the natural weight of aging or the heaviness of depression itself. But sometimes it's the medication. Older classes of antidepressants can interfere with the brain's memory pathways. They affect neurotransmitters in ways that may calm sadness, but at the cost of clarity, alertness, and recall. What's meant to heal the mind can, in some cases, slowly cloud it. And here's the misconception so many families hold on to. Well, if it's an antidepressant, it must be safe. Doctors wouldn't prescribe it if it wasn't. But not all antidepressants are created equal. Some of the older types carry much higher risks for seniors, especially when used long-term. So what's the path forward? Awareness. Ask the doctor if a safer, more modern alternative exists. Many newer antidepressants are designed with fewer side effects on memory and cognition. Sometimes therapy, lifestyle changes, or group support can also complement medication, easing the load without worsening confusion. The key is to never accept memory loss as just the price of treatment. There are options, and families have the right to ask for them. Because the goal of treating depression is to bring joy back, not to take memories away. No one should have to sacrifice their mind in the fight for their spirit. And this brings us to something that may surprise many of you. Because memory loss doesn't only hide in pills for the heart, the mind, or the stomach. Sometimes it's in the medications for something as private and everyday as bladder control. And the risks here may shock you. Now let's move into an area that doesn't often get talked about openly, but affects so many seniors: bladder control. For older adults, frequent trips to the bathroom, sudden urges, or embarrassing accidents can feel humiliating. Out of love, families want to ease that burden. Doctors often prescribe bladder control medications, and on the surface it seems like a gift. Fewer accidents, less stress, and restored dignity. But here's the side families don't always see. Imagine this. Your loved one starts taking one of these pills. At first, things improve. They feel more confident going out, they don't worry about accidents, and life seems a little freer. But slowly, something else creeps in. They become confused, disoriented, and forgetful. They repeat themselves. They lose track of conversations. And the family thinks, well, maybe it's just age catching up. Maybe it's the embarrassment weighing them down. But what if the truth is hidden in that tiny pill? Many of these bladder control medications belong to a group called anticholinergics. They work by blocking acetylcholine, a key neurotransmitter the brain depends on for learning and memory. When acetylcholine is blocked, the signals between brain cells don't travel properly. And when those signals weaken, memory and clarity weaken too. In fact, some studies have found a strong connection between long-term use of these medications and an increased risk of dementia. The heartbreaking part is that families often misinterpret what's happening. They think the confusion is just emotional embarrassment, or that aging itself is to blame. Rarely do they stop to ask, could the very medication meant to give back dignity be stealing away memory at the same time? So, what's the alternative? It doesn't always have to be medication. Non-drug options can make a big difference. Pelvic floor therapy, for example, which strengthens the muscles that control the bladder. Or timed voiding routines, where bathroom visits are scheduled to reduce urgency. Even small lifestyle adjustments, like limiting fluids before bed, can help manage the problem without risking the mind. Because in the end, what's the greater loss? A moment of inconvenience, or the fading away of the person you love? And now we've come to the 9th and final category. This one will surprise many of you, because it's a medication millions take every day, believing it's protecting their health. But for some, it carries an unexpected cost to memory. Yes, I'm talking about statins. And finally, we arrive at the 9th medication. This one may surprise you because it's one of the most commonly prescribed drugs in the world, statins, the cholesterol-lowering medications so many seniors take every single day. Picture this: a senior who has always been articulate, sharp, and quick with words. Someone who could recall dates, names, and details with ease. But after months, even years of taking cholesterol medication, something changes. They start stumbling mid-sentence. They reach for a word that used to come naturally, but it just doesn't surface. They look frustrated, embarrassed, sometimes even angry at themselves. Families watch this and think, well, that's just what happens when you get older. But could the pill meant to protect the heart also be clouding the mind? Now here's where it gets complicated. Some studies suggest a link between statin use and memory problems. Other studies argue the evidence isn't conclusive. This is why statins are so controversial in conversations about brain health. What's clear, though, is that enough seniors have reported confusion, forgetfulness, and memory gaps after starting these drugs that it cannot be ignored. And here's the misconception so many people hold on to. If it lowers cholesterol, it must protect the brain. It seems logical. After all, lower cholesterol means better blood flow, right? But the brain is more complex than that. It thrives on balance, and sometimes what helps the heart may not help the mind in the same way. Now, this doesn't mean anyone should suddenly stop taking statins. That can be dangerous. The key is conversation. Talk to the doctor, monitor memory changes, and never assume that one pill is the perfect solution for both heart and brain. So now we've walked through 9 common medications, 9 everyday pills that, in different ways, can trigger memory loss, confusion, and even accelerate dementia. And that leaves us with one important question. What does this all mean for you and for the people you love most? It's heartbreaking, isn't it? To sit across the table from someone you love, someone who once told you the same stories over and over with pride and detail, and realize that now they can't even finish the story. It's heartbreaking to watch a parent forget the names of their grandchildren, to see a partner look at you with a blank stare, searching for recognition that doesn't come right away. And what makes it even harder is knowing that sometimes this fading isn't just the passage of time. Sometimes it's caused by the very medications meant to protect them. Pills that were prescribed to help, but instead they quietly steal pieces of memory, one day at a time. But here's where I want you to pause and take a breath. Because this isn't just a story of loss. This is a story of power. Because awareness changes everything. Once you know what to look for, you can act. Once you understand the risks, you can ask questions. You can sit in that doctor's office and say, I've noticed changes. Could this medication be the reason? Is there a safer alternative? And in that moment, you move from helpless to empowered, from silent witness to advocate. That's the gift knowledge brings. It reframes the whole picture. Instead of accepting memory loss as something inevitable, you see it for what it could be. A side effect, a signal, a call to take another path. You no longer have to watch passively while someone you love slips away. You can intervene, you can push for reviews, you can protect what matters most. And sometimes the first step is as simple as a medication checkup, a quiet conversation with a doctor or pharmacist, a review of every pill bottle on the kitchen counter, asking, do they still need this? Is there another way? That one conversation could add months or even years of clarity back to a life.